Hello again to another Gallery Reacts, and today we have another date night with Eric. Yay!
Awesome.
And I'm losing voice because I'm still sick.
I got her sick.
Yeah, and it just keeps holding on to me for weeks now.
From what we read, it's called the 100-day cough.
Yeah, it's really weird.
Can't
It's
get rid of it.
it's not only cough though, it's like the nose as well. It's like flu, but it doesn't go away for after a week. This is now week 3.
Yeah, and we're still taking medicine.
Anyway, we're gonna be watching today. And why?
We're watching, let's see, on the 2nd of February, 1653, New Amsterdam becomes later named New York. I did not know that. New Amsterdam, the Dutch trading post that became NYC. From Geographics. Simon Whistler. I know this guy. I know him, but I watch his videos.
Today's video is brought to you by Babbel. There are
I
lots
like
of
it.
reasons
Good
you
stuff.
might need to learn a language.
Babbel.
Professional,
Babbel.
personal, travel.
If you can get a
Lots of
lifetime
reasons.
subscription
Now,
to
you might
Babbel,
think,
that's worth
well,
it. If you pay month to
I've already
month,
kept track of that, Simon. I've been using those free apps
I'm using
on the App Store.
Rosetta
To be
Stone.
honest, it hasn't
Well, you
gone
did have
brilliantly, Simon.
a long
What are you here to
thing
tell me?
for
Well, I'm
Babbel as
A few years, yeah.
And
Few
how
years
often
ago.
did you use?
Yeah,
It
once a
goes
week or
beyond
so.
the basics. Indeed.
Pretty
It is
good
the
with your
number
stuff, Babbel.
one language learning app in the world.
You have to really,
with 14 different languages.
you must have really want it in
So
order
why
to use it.
is Babbel better, Simon? Why is it so much better than the rest? Well, with Babbel, you can count on people who have actual experience teaching the language, not some machine learning weirdness which churns out
I may
useless
consider getting that too.
sentences that you're never going to use.
Just another source of information.
So no distractions. You can see right here. There are no adverts at all, which is brilliant. It also focuses on
I mean, if they have the
language,
lifetime one,
teaching you
then
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah.
I won't pay month to month.
counter
Or
I'm a
yeah.
lifetime.
situations.
I'm a
Now
lifetime
this
guy.
app is just part of it. They've
That's
also got a
one-time
website.
fee.
I have to say, I've only ever used the app. It's all very nicely designed. It's easy to use. So start learning a new language today with Babbel. Get 6 months for 50% off. There is a link below. Limited time only.
That's from 2020, so it's way out of the time.
Oh, last time I checked, it was lifetime for $250.
That's
New York
about
Half
it.
off. Yeah.
is one of the most important cities in the world. Not only is it the largest city in the United States by population, with 8.4 million residents in the city proper and almost 20 million in the greater metropolitan area, but is also one of the world's premier economic engines, churning out an estimated $2 trillion in 2019. If it were a sovereign nation, it would have the 12th largest GDP in the world. But where did New York City come from? Well, believe it or not, the city did not simply spring into being one day, skyscrapers and all. I don't think anybody was thinking that. Nearly 400 years ago, settlers from the Dutch Republic came to the islands of Manhattan and founded a fur trading
only
colony there.
400?
Unlike the
not very
Puritans
old.
in Plymouth,
No!
who were
I thought
seeking
that would be
religious
longer than
freedom,
that.
while
Like,
the English settlers
way
in
earlier
Jamestown,
than
who wanted to
400 years
project
ago.
English power onto the new world.
I'd be thinking
The
that would be
Dutch
more like
were
some
only
one of those
interested in
Mayflower
trade. For
thingy.
40 years, they ran a profitable
ship thingy.
enterprise, and in the
But the
process,
people landed there about the same
inadvertently
time.
laid the foundation for the
Who knows?
great city.
What do we learn now?
U.S. history.
They called their colony New Amsterdam. Prior to the arrival of the Europeans, the area of present-day New York City was inhabited by the Lenape, also known as the Delaware people. They were farmers, hunters, and also took advantage of their coastal location to produce wampum, beads made from shells, which they traded to other tribes located further inland. The area had previously been visited by European explorers, but none conducted an overly detailed survey of the region. However, in 1609, an English explorer named Henry Hudson arrived in what would become
That's
New
where the
York
Hudson River
Harbor,
come from?
searching for the fabled Northwest Passage, a supposedly fast trade route to Asia, which turned out to exist
boat.
only in the minds of European merchants and monarchs. Hudson proceeded 100 miles up the river that was named after him, past the site of present-day Albany, before returning. He provided a glowing report of the harbor he'd found to his employer, the Dutch East India Company, stating that it would be an ideal location for a colony. 15 years later, in 1624, settlers first arrived to establish a fur trading colony on Governor's Island. The next year, the settlers constructed a larger settlement, including a defensive fort in Lower Manhattan, calling it New Amsterdam. The Dutch called the island Mannahatta, which is derived from the Lenape word Manhattan, which has been translated variously as gathering place, place of many hills, or more colourfully, place of general inebriation. After initially spreading throughout the colony of New Netherlands, which consisted of the Hudson River Valley all the way to where present-day Albany is located, as well as outposts as far south as Delaware and as far east as Connecticut, the threat of Native American raids and other hardships of the wilderness increasingly led to the concentration of settlers in New Amsterdam. In 1626, Governor-General Peter Minuit decided to consolidate his position by meeting with a local tribe of Native Americans known as Manhattoes and striking a deal with them to buy the entire island of Manhattan for them for the value of 60 guilders in trade goods. While a far higher price than the legend that says Minuit bought the island for $24 in glass beads, the modern-day value of the purchase still only comes out at about $1,100, a bargain price when you consider what the island's worth eventually became. For their part, the Native Americans in the area didn't understand
costing 50-something million
to the Dutch.
Ted's freaking rich, more expensive
land was
per month.
culture. What they believed they had agreed to was that the Dutch had purchased the right to trade on the island.
Yeah, but still, this is today's money.
Yeah. Trade goods and
Still, what it takes to earn $1,000 back then? You don't. Not in your lifetime.
But of course, that didn't happen. By the time of the American
dollars didn't exist back then anyway.
Yeah, sorry, in
Native
beads.
Americans had been completely removed
Work
from
for a year
the
for
greater
one
New
bead.
York area, replaced by increasing numbers of European settlers. On an island that would become famous for large and questionable real estate deals, this was easily the largest and most questionable of them all. For the first 20 years of its existence, New Amsterdam was considered a provincial backwater by the Dutch West India Company. The most powerful and respected merchants made their money in the sugarcane trade in the Caribbean, or the spice trade in Asia, or the sale of slaves from Africa. By contrast, the North American fur trade was considered distinctly second-rate, fit only for smaller merchants. No prominent Dutch citizens really wanted to go to New Amsterdam. As a result, the population of the colony was filled with many non-Dutch-speaking citizens, French, Huguenots, Spanish Protestants fleeing the Inquisition, people from England, Germany, Italy, even as far afield as Russia and Sweden. And although they weren't counted in the census, there were many African slaves brought to the colony against their will. One official reports hearing over a dozen languages being spoken in the streets. And they were a rowdy bunch too. There was reportedly one tavern for every 20 men in the city, and drunkenness was an extremely common phenomenon. It makes sense when you think about it. A bunch of men thousands of miles away from home, stuck in a cramped colony with limited recreational opportunities. It was bound to happen. There were fights in the streets, duels, the occasional arson or murder. The fort was falling into disrepair, and livestock were permitted to roam around the city unchecked. Still, 4 times a year, trade ships left New Amsterdam loaded with trade goods to return to the Netherlands, and the city continued to serve its
If you
primary
can think
function
about it like that,
as the
it was
commercial
cosmopolitan
center
city
of the
from
New
get-go.
Netherlands. No one thought to build a church in New Amsterdam until 1642, nearly 20 years after the settlement was established. Unlike the New England colonies, New Amsterdam was not designed as a center for religious worship away from the crowned heads of Europe. It was purely a business enterprise. And yet, in its own way, it became a center of tolerance towards all people, regardless of faith. The first Jewish settlers in North America came to New Amsterdam in 1654. 350 years later, New York City has one of the highest proportions of Jews anywhere outside of Israel. Catholics and Protestants from all over Europe came to New Amsterdam to live together. It was the first instance of what would later become known as the American melting pot, the ability to take people from all over the world and put them together to forge a new city or nation. New York City still serves this role today. It is one of the most culturally diverse places in the world. By 1647, it was becoming obvious that New Amsterdam and New Netherland as a whole were being
Wasn't the
expanded.
Constitution
The
signed in
director,
like
Willem
1660
Taft,
something?
had embarked on a disastrous
remember.
scheme to
I should know that.
Yeah, you should.
But it's information I don't use in my daily life, so...
attacks, and when the tribes refused, he sent soldiers to massacre 120 natives, including women and children. This, understandably, riled up all the tribes in the area against the Dutch, even the ones that had previously been on friendly terms with colonists, and the resulting series of raids and retaliations became known as Kieft's War, or the Time of the Blood. Fed up, the colonists of New Amsterdam petitioned the West India Company, and their board of directors fired Kieft in 1647. To top things off for the disgraced former governor, the ship that was carrying him back to the Netherlands ran aground and sank off the coast of Wales in September 1647, and Kieft drowned along with 80 other passengers on the doomed ship. Kieft's replacement as Director General of New Netherland was Peter Stuyvesant, one of the most important and colourful figures in the history of the city. Stuyvesant had been thrown out of university at the age of 20 after seducing the daughter of his landlord, and he joined the Dutch West India Company soon after, rising through the ranks to become governor of the island of Curaçao in the Dutch West Indies in 1642. In 1644, he led an attack on the Spanish-held island of San Martin in the Caribbean and had his leg horrifically mangled by a cannonball, forcing his amputation and replacement with a wooden peg, giving him the nickname Peg-Leg Pete. Stuyvesant received orders from his bosses to turn the colony's fortunes around and restore its profitability. When he arrived in 1647, he immediately went to work repairing the damage done by Kieft's war. He encouraged settlements of the area surrounding New Amsterdam to the southeast of Manhattan, on Staten Island, on the western tip of Long Island, and the town of Brooklyn was later established. All of these had original Dutch-sounding names that I can't pronounce. To the north of Amsterdam, the village of Haarlem was established, and finally, to the north of the islands of Manhattan,
So all those names are coming from the actual names of the towns.
Built a prosperous farm and large farmhouse. The area quickly became known as the Bronx, which later evolved into the Bronx with an X. Many of these surrounding communities in the greater New York area, including Hackensack, Hoboken, Yonkers, Secaucus, can trace their origins to Dutch settlements. Stuyvesant also made changes to the city of New Amsterdam as well. He ordered the widening of the main thoroughfare of the city, known today as Broadway, and had a 12-foot wooden wall built across the northern edge of the city to keep out raids by Native American tribes or by the English. The location where the city wall stood is today known as Wall Street. The city wall contains the expansion of the
Interesting, I
city
never knew that.
at the time, which directly led to the cramped close quarters of Lower Manhattan in modern-day New York City. The Director General helped to oversee a change in business practice for the colony. Rather than monopolizing trade goods from New Netherlands, the West India Company opened its trade ports to other merchants and charged them a fee. Stuyvesant also transformed New Amsterdam into an important way station from Holland to the New World. Ships that originally intended to travel to the Caribbean colonies instead made the shorter trip to New Netherlands, dropped their goods, and picked up goods brought in by other ships who plied the same trade from New Netherlands to the Caribbean. This was the start of the infamous triangle trades that brought African slaves to the New World in increasingly larger numbers. During this time, the population of New Amsterdam exploded. It is estimated that the population of the city grew from 270 in 1630 to 2,000 in 1655, and by 1664, the population was at 9,000. This population boom, caused by a combination of increased immigration from the economic boom and a series of military campaigns that added territory to New Netherlands, including neighbouring New Sweden, was again comprised of just as many non-Dutch as Dutch citizens, and many settled permanently in America, becoming the scions of prominent families that would go on to become the nobility of the United States. The most famous immigrant to the colony, although no one knew at this time, was a Dutchman called Claes von Rosenfeld, who came to New Amsterdam in the 1640s. His son changed the family name to Roosevelt, and they would go on to become one of the most important families in American history, producing 2 United States presidents in the 20th century.
2?
I only know one.
Yeah.
I couldn't name them all.
I mean,
Throughout
one
the
of them probably
1600s,
doesn't
England
have
and
the
Holland were
Roosevelt
competitors
surname.
and enemies.
Huh.
They had the 2 most powerful navies in the world, and as a result had the 2 largest trading empires in the world. And they were constantly seeking to undermine each other. The 2 nations had already fought a war in the 1650s, but the internal turmoil in England caused by the English Civil War and the execution of King Charles I meant the Dutch were largely unchallenged. With the English Restoration in 1660, however, King Charles II knew that he needed to consolidate his position in the New World if his nation was to truly prosper. The English had
what's the number of the
established a
current
series of colonies
king?
on the American coast, including Virginia, Maryland,
no
and
idea.
New England, but
He was
between them was
crowned
New
last year, but
Netherlands, occupying a
I
prime
don't know. I
position
don't know
on
what the number is.
Manhattan
The
Island.
6th?
Charles resolved
I don't know,
to
third?
take New Netherland for
15th?
himself. Stuyvesant was worried about this possibility and had repeatedly begged for troops and cannons to defend his colony should the English come after it. But the Dutch Republic was stretched thin, worn down by a long series of European conflicts and with many colonial interests around the world to protect. New Netherland simply wasn't high on the priority list, so no troops came. In 1664, the English made their move. 4 English frigates sailed into the harbour of New Amsterdam carrying 450 men and a lot of cannons. They threatened to bombard the city if it refused to surrender. Stuyvesant, ever the warrior, stood on the battlements and was prepared to fight it out, until he received a letter signed by the most prominent townspeople that said they would not resist the English. They were merchants, not soldiers. Their town was made of wood, and it wouldn't take long for the English cannons to destroy all of it. And on top of that, they felt no loyalty to the Dutch Republic. They'd be just as happy trading with the English as with the Dutch. Stuyvesant had no choice. On September the 6th, he met with the English commander and surrendered the city. Most of New Netherland quickly followed suit. The English offered free passage back to Holland for anyone who didn't want to stay, but nobody took them up on it. Stuyvesant, unable to bear the shame,
1764 that they
got
got
the
the
independent north
independent.
of the city, known as the Great Bowery, eventually.
What I'm trying to say, I had it in my head
The
because I know
English
it's not
renamed
that
the
long,
city,
not
as well
much
as the
longer than
colony
before the
New
Polish
York, after
constitution
King
was
Charles's
signed. So
brother,
like
the Duke of York, who had been
1766
granted
because
control
our
of
constitution was signed in
territory by the king. The seizure of New
1793.
Netherlands started a second war between the English and the Dutch that lasted from 1665 to 1667. The English
It was just in my
initially had
head,
the upper
you
hands,
know.
but the country was devastated
your tongue.
economically both by the outbreak
No, I'm
of
just
the
like
plague
I said it in like 1664. That's where the constitution was signed. That was the independence thing, isn't it?
The Dutch
Constitution
and the
equals
English came to the
independence of America.
negotiating table, and as part of the
Come
peace
on,
treaty
you know
signed
that.
in Breda, the Dutch
Information I don't
agreed
use
to
every
give
day.
up all
Sorry.
Okay.
claim to New Netherland
I learned it in school and
exchange
just
for
forgot about
Holland
it
gaining
after.
control of
I don't need that
Suriname
information.
on the South American coast. But this is
You're
not the
using
last
that,
the Dutch
though.
would see of their colony.
When?
Because you're American.
I don't use it every day.
No, not the
Constitution.
information. The fact that
In
you
1672,
are
King
American.
Charles
That's how you're
II,
using your
humbled
constitution.
by
You
the
have your
outbreak
rights
of
and
the
stuff.
Second Anglo-Dutch War, formed an alliance with the French king Louis XIV. The two monarchs resolved to destroy the Dutch Republic once and for all. Initially, they were successful in invading and occupying much of the Netherlands, but the crisis allowed for William III, Prince of Orange, who would eventually become the King of England, to become the leader of the Dutch opposition, and he rallied his countrymen against the invaders, creating the Dutch waterline, a series of deliberately flooded areas to keep out the French army. Their border secured, the Dutch went on the offensive. In July 1673, a Dutch squadron suddenly appeared in New York Harbor, attacked and occupied New York City. The Dutch renamed it New Orange, and for the moment, it seemed that they had restored their New Netherland colony after
Never
9
heard about the
years
New
of
Orange
withdrawal.
before.
But it didn't last long. In November of
that's why.
1674, the Treaty of Westminster ended the Third Anglo-Dutch War, and the Dutch formally renounced
Ay, 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 ay.
New Netherlands. New Orange reverted back to English rule, and the name was restored to New York, which it has been ever since. The origins of New York City as New Amsterdam had an enormous influence on what the character of the city later became. Not only did many of the familiar place names we associate with New York, including 4 of the 5 boroughs, have their origins in the Dutch colony, but their founding of New Amsterdam as a business enterprise meant that New York City has always been a place of commerce first. The multi-ethnic, multicultural nature of New York City also has its origins in New Amsterdam, as the Dutch colony was diverse in a way that other settlements of the period, including Plymouth, Jamestown, and St. Augustine, were not. It's truly amazing that what was once a small settlement on the southern tip of Manhattan Island, put there for the sole reason of collecting furs, would, in the span of less than 400 years, grow to become one of the largest and most important cities in the world. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button below. Also support this channel by supporting our fantastic...
That was interesting. I did not know that piece of history.
But did you pay attention to history at school?
Somewhat.
Somewhat?
Yeah.
Well, I'm still kind of like mind
School
blown
was a
about
long time
400
ago.
years. That's only 400 years.
Yeah.
A bit more than 400 years. It's 450 or something like that now, if you're gonna think about it. Because it was like 1620 something, 1650 something, so that would make the 400 years to 2000 something, yeah? Oh, sorry, no, it is 400. We are only 2000. Why I have in my head? Never mind. My maths are always off. But still, it's just I keep forgetting America and it's not that old. Like, I'm coming from Poland. Poland was christened in 966. Our country exists for more than 1,000 years and with that name and stuff like that. So, like, most of European countries exist more than 1,000 years at this stage. So if you kind of think about America, you always hear about America. There's always America, America, America this, America that, America during the Second War, America during the First War, all of those things during the 20th century and stuff like that. And it's just like, it's like always was there, but it wasn't. Like I said, the Constitution in America was signed only in 760 something. So that makes America only like less than 300 years old.
Wikipedia. Google.
Yeah, no, but I don't have my phone and I don't want to use the computer for that. It's gonna slow down everything. But yeah, that's what it is though. It's only so young. It's a young country if you kind of think about it. It's just, it happened to be. It's like I was watching, like making reaction to the gold rush in California. Okay, tell me now, because you're from California. How long did the gold rush in California last?
Not a clue.
Not a clue?
Not
what
a
would be your guess though?
How long it lasted?
Yeah.
20 years?
He's always like that. He always guessing and he's always perfect. Guess this problem was perfect. 10 years.
10 years. 20.
Yeah, but
half.
still, but like, I was thinking
close.
it was longer than like 50 years. Like myself. But obviously I heard about gold rush and stuff. We watched the westerns and things like that. So I was thinking that would be probably longer than that. 10 years. But just started in 1 year and then finished like maybe fizzled out after 10 years and that was all. And they moved on either to become farmers or they moved to Nevada to do silver.
They bled it dry.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, so but it's just like
all people came, took it, left.
I actually never thought about it that way. But this here turned out it's interesting too. Never heard about the New Orange though.
Yeah, bye.
That's you, but that must have been really quick, really short lived as well. Well, Big Apple obviously didn't mention that, but still.
Big Orange.
Big Orange, Big Apple. It was interesting though. It's like I kind of knew that was like it was called New Amsterdam before it was called New York. I've seen that, but still, I didn't realize all those like names like Harlem and Bronx and Brooklyn and things like that actually from that time as well. You know, because that's quite a thing. Like I knew the Manhattan was kind of named after the original Native American name, but I didn't know that was, interesting. Something else to add?
No.
As always, we have nothing to add. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow and see you next week. Bye!